do a quick intro. I think you already did that. 30 plus years in this logistics space, and been focused last 20 plus years in OTM, GTM, WMS. Hands-on solution enterprise architect. Get my hands dirty every now and then. Like to create new applications, and created a suite of applications around OTM and GTM, which we can talk about here. As a quick introduction to KSAP, KSAP has been in business since '99. Started it back '99 as just for logistics software, but pretty soon in the first year and a half, gravitated to the GC3 glog implementations, and been doing OTM, GTM, WMS for the last 23 years. And that's all we do. We are the largest independent SI that is in the market. We are big in North America, Latin America, in APEC. In Europe, we are beginning to have a presence. It's not as widespread yet in this European market here. So we do a lot of custom development and software solutions to augment facilities and augment features in OTM and GTM, which we will be happy to talk at the booth if you have time. But this is a quick small list of customers that we have in different areas of implementation, in support, in migrations, in our own application suite that we have deployed. So that's just a quick thing on that. So with that aside, now I can start on the topic for the day today in data exports and replication. A lot of the customers in cloud are basically evaluating how do we get data out of the cloud database and how can we use it across our enterprise for reporting, for data warehousing, and other options. So I want to first set the stage of what data export is and is not. So it's not any application to application interface. It's not a real-time replication system. And it is basically not going to be something if you are looking for sub-second response of your data in OTM cloud in your replicated data warehouse. So that's not what it is used for. It is used for time-based data export, meaning if you are flexible with the data that you need it within 1 hour, within 2 hours, within a day, once a day. If you need it based on that level of frequency, data export API is the solution for you. So as I was saying, typically for data replication, there are two options that are provided by Oracle. One is near real time, which is the Oracle Golden Gate option, and that works as a platform as a service, and that platform as a service you have to manage as a customer, but the Golden Gate provisions every single table from OTM except for some exclusions like I underscore tables. If you are familiar with that, those are not replicated using Golden Gate. But with the REST API, that is the second option that has been introduced by Oracle, that comes built in. When I say built in is you don't have to buy an additional license for it. The REST API data export feature comes out of the box. And it does require customer to manage the program interface, to make the calls, to get the response back, to manage the data export mechanism, which I will go into in the next few slides. There are some alternatives which people might be wondering, but they are not valid options for replication. DB.XML, CSV export, and so forth. Those should not be used for data replication. By the way, anytime you have question, please stop me. If I'm going too fast or something that doesn't cover what you are needing, then please do stop me. Here is a quick summary of different options. Like I said, the first two are what Oracle recommends, Golden Gate. Golden Gate runs as a database job, and it is a separate license that you have to get for Golden Gate, OCI and PAS. It works at the database table level, and with that you can get sub-second lag. So you can essentially get anywhere from like 5 milliseconds to approximately 5 seconds delay. Anything that you did in your cloud instance in OTM, GTM, you will get that data in your replicated database. So it's almost real time. There's no limits. It is asynchronous in nature. Versus the data export API, you can do pull or you can do push-pull model. You can do async or sync. It is not a separate license to buy. You can do HTTP post and put, but it is something that you have to manage and develop the mechanism to get data out and put it in your data warehouse, do any transformation that you might need to do. And it is important to note that it impacts at the app server level. So the requests that you make go to the OTM application server versus Golden Gate acts as a database job. So it's not an impact to your application operations. The other three are here just for completeness, but they're not suitable for data export. Okay. So like I said, why do you need this data, right? So what options do you have? So if you needed reports which are just based off OTM, GTM, and only those data is required, then you can very easily use BI reports or transportation intelligence. That's a good choice for you. When you have actually an existing data reporting interface, where it's a mechanism where everything goes through your separate reporting infrastructure, then you have a need to export the data from OTM, which is where the data replication would come into picture. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Yeah, so that's where data replication comes into picture. Plus, when you are mixing data from OTM, GTM with other ERP sources and presenting one holistic data view in your data warehouse, even in that case, you would need data replication. So when we talk about data exports, what is included and what is not? What schemas can you get access to? So basically you can get access to all of the schemas. You have the primary glog owner, which is obvious, but you can also get access to archive, which is something you cannot get from Golden Gate. If you are using Golden Gate, you would not be able to access data which is more than 2 years old. As you know, the Oracle data retention policy allows for 2 years of operational data in cloud. All other data every week gets archived into the archive schema. So if you need access to that, you would need to use data export as part of your solutioning to get access to it, which the data export API will provide that, along with the reports and analytics schema also. So I talked about what Golden Gate allows and not allow, but from a schema, this is what is allowed, but there are some tables which are excluded from being exported. So what are those? I'm not going to go through the entire list here. There is a link that is provided here for you if you want to see the whole list. But typically these are tables that, even though they are tables, they're really not data. They are more security tables, or how the internal OTM is set up, like access control list, application server tables, connection pools, and others. So you typically would not need them for your reporting anyways, but it's good to mention that these tables you cannot do data export on. So, the savings and efficiency opportunities using data export. So obviously, as I mentioned, you will not need additional license. You will not have to maintain Golden Gate or your PaaS environment, and you do not have to, every year pay the subscription for that. So that's one option. You get to use your object storage, any object storage of your choice. You can manage the thing in any database. So it doesn't, once you get the data out, you could put it in Oracle database or any other database. It's not restricted to putting it in Oracle database. And then you can also tailor it to what you want. Like, you may not want the 1200 tables or 2000 tables that are there in OTM. you're not using all of them. For your reporting, let's say you're using 100 tables. Then you are able to, with data export, say, I only want these 100. And oh, by the way, I want these 50 every day is fine because master data does not change that much. Transactional data I want every 2 hours, or the event data I want every half hour. You can decide, fine tune what you want, what data you want to the level of the field. So you don't want all 100 fields in the order release table, for example. You only want 15 fields. You can tailor it to that request. And you can get even two types. So you can get even object-based exports using the JSON format, which I am going to show you a couple of samples here in a few minutes. Any questions so far? Okay, good. Okay, so now getting into the API, this will help pictorially put together how it all works, right? How does it work? So we have our OTM application, a SaaS platform here with these 4 schemas that I mentioned. And you have to have your own customer environment. As I mentioned, the one time you have to set up your process. You have to set up a program, write a custom program to make the request. So you have to make the request to OTM. That request can be synchronous or asynchronous. But for data replication or large data, asynchronous is the way to go. You should not try to use synchronous because you are holding up the thread while returning large amounts of data. So it's not recommended to use synchronous option. So when you make an async request, it goes to the OTM application server, and what is returned is either a compressed CSV file data in CSV format, or it's written in JSON format. It depends on how you made the request. Request allows you to tailor it to say, give me data in CSV format, in a zipped format, or in the JSON format. So once OTM has processed that request, it will put the data, export the data into any object storage that you specify. And there you have a choice of saying a pre-authenticated URL you can select, or you can set up your external system which does OAuth 2 authentication and puts the files in the object store location that you might want. Okay, so once you get these files put in there, then your custom process should do the extract transform and load it into your final repository, whether it's a data warehouse, whether it's another Oracle database, wherever is the final resting place for that data, you can move that data to there. So this is from an architecture point of view. As I mentioned already, the request that you make is made as an API, and it is affecting the data application server, and then the response that comes back in, you can move, it's put in a storage, and then your program, which is orchestrating all of this, can take that files, transform it if necessary, and then load it to your final database warehouse, where it is the staging database or data lake or data warehouse that you want to put it in. So that is how the overall architecture works. I'll take a quick pause if you guys have any questions.
So exporting the data during business hours, does it impact the application performance if it's a huge data, or it's recommended to do it during non-business hours? If yes, then what about the large organizations which have 24/7 operations, and how we export data in this way?
Yeah. So it is perfectly fine to do the exports all during the day. You're not limited to the time window. However, to protect against any adverse reactions, Oracle has put a max limit of large running queries. If you are familiar with large running query concept in OTM, any query that takes a long amount of time, those you can set up maximum 3 of that. There's a limit for that. So even if you made 100 requests in the last 5 minutes, it will do the first 3 and then keep chunking the data and sending it back, which is where, as I mentioned, async is the best, because you are asynchronously made the request. You can make 100 requests, no problem, but then the response will come back in an asynchronous fashion as and when OTM application server finishes through those 3 threads. It will not use more than those threads. You can change that you can change it to 5 or 10, but that's at the admin level, or through an SR or something. You can request if there is a case which is requiring you more. But if even making 100 requests, you still get the data back fast, because the 3 limit is only for large running queries and something that cannot be returned. So if you are doing more frequent pulls, then your incremental data is small. So if you are saying you're making a call every half an hour, then you may only have X thousand records for orders, or few thousand events, or things like that, right? So it will get limited based on the frequency. So as the frequency becomes smaller, the time duration becomes smaller, the data size becomes smaller as well.
But can you possibly cause performance issues?
You could, but only to the 3 queries that you are running. So it won't affect your operations drastically, because only 3 threads that are being used at that point. Yeah.
And that's something that can be changed at the DB admin level, or that's a service request?
That's a service request. Yeah. Okay, so I think we covered most of it. Just want to recap here. You have to implement the system to receive and request and receive the exports, and you need an object storage for putting your asynchronous data. It's a one-time setup activity. You have to do some grants and set up the user access and make sure the user that you are using to make the request has the appropriate privileges, and do all that. And then, once it is done, then you have to keep managing that. So like for downtimes, or, OTM didn't respond something, or there was a glitch, then you have to make sure that you go back to the previous point that you last received a successful export. So you have to be able to do that. So those are some considerations here. What I'm mentioning is every quarter there is an update. There's new features added, new tables, new setup. You have to test and make sure that the quarterly upgrade or the quarterly update has not caused any issue. So that you need to make sure that it's included in your maintenance of this application that you've written. And you also have to ensure that anytime there is an error or exception, then how you handle the exception, right? So even if your system, your custom program is down, let's say for a day, or if OTM is going through a maintenance or a unexpected outage, then how do you recover from that? All those considerations you have to keep in your solution that you put in place. So this point here, there till last year 24B, there was not a good solution for how deletes are handled. So let's say you exported the data, right, today, and some ref num changed, some remark changed, or you unassigned a shipment, you change the carrier, and you withdraw the tender, certain objects get deleted, right? The shipment is deleted. A new shipment is created. New shipment comes through, but how do you know what got deleted? So that was not very easy to identify before 24B. Since 24C, there is a feature added where for the objects, at the object level, you get the primary key of what has been deleted. So you not only in the time duration that you say from this time to this time, what are the new and updated records, but you also get what objects got deleted. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's not too many options in terms of what you can do when you make the request. You have to specify a date range, and when you specify the date range, it is insert or update. So even when you say last 30 minutes, so anything that is inserted or updated in that 30 minutes will be exported. So that is automatically happening. There is a way to use saved query for doing complex joins and getting only some specific IDs, but that requires setup of saved queries and then getting the IDs back and then making the calls for those specific IDs based on your saved query. Because saved query will only return you the primary key. And based on that, you have to make subsequent calls to get the overall object for that. And requests are queued after third. As I mentioned, there are 3 threads for long running queries. It will fulfill them as they came in, and you can track the request for synchronous or asynchronous. There is a way to check the response and check for the status of your request. So you can at any time make a HTTP call to say, what is the status of my request? I requested 40 tables, 10 might be done, the 11th one might be in progress. You can find out. And if something errored out, it will also tell you if it errored out. One important thing that I should mention is, let's say you requested a large chunk of data. So let's say your initial replication or initial export, you have 20 million records, for example. It will chunk it. The response comes in parts. So every part is about 10,000 records or up to 10 megs. It's configurable. What is the part size? But it will put it in as many parts. So if there is a 10,000 records, then you will get so many number of files in your zip file response that is put on your file storage. So in your program that you write, you have to expect more than one part. So your program that you write, you cannot expect all data in a large file. A 20 meg file will not come back. It will be chunked. So you have to loop through it. So in the deleted primary keys, they are not going to capture for I_transactional tables, but typically those are never deleted as well. Sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned that deletes are included in one request, in the same request.
In the same request.
But are they in the good sequence? Imagine that you have a record which is created, deleted, and then again created. Can you process them in the correct sequence?
Yes, yeah. So what typically you should do is, that's a very good question. That you should first do it comes in 2 parts. A delete file comes separate, and then the add or insert update file comes separate. So you first process your add updates, and then you have to process. But the timestamps are all included in that. So you have to make sure that if the timestamp of add, delete, and then again add is there, in the rare case that you are processing them in the right sequence, because the timestamps come with it.
So if your delete timestamp is before
The add timestamp, then
you should not delete.
You should not delete, yeah. Or delete the existing record and then put in, because it may have, let's say a shipment is deleted, more than likely you're not going to use the same ID again, but in a hypothetical case, let's say it's a contact, and its contact base is my name, Alpesh. I created a contact, I had some notifications, some contact rules or formats or options, which I should first delete, and all the other related tables, and then insert the new version of Alpesh, as a contact if you added it again. So that time sequence you have to manage. That is part of the complexity that you have to build into your application that you build. So yeah, that sometimes get underestimated, and if you don't plan ahead, or you are not planning for multiple files, multiple parts, files not coming in, sometimes there's errors, how to handle the errors, and make sure that you are redoing, retrying, notifications. All these considerations when you write a custom application must be taken in place, including how to manage your deletes. Because some clients want to do soft deletes. It's not a propagated delete, but only a soft delete with the mark the record is deleted, but it's not really deleted in the data warehouse.
And one question
Sure.
regarding the request criteria.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we can in the criteria we can say I want to pull the data for last 30 minutes, for example.
Mhm.
If I fire that request 2 or 3 times during that 30 minutes time, for example, would I get only the delta records, or it will fetch every time duplicate records and I have to take care of fixing the duplicate?
So it depends on your date range. So the date range, right? If all 3 requests that you made are for the same date range, then you will get duplicate data.
Okay.
But typically the way you should do it is, if first request you made for this window, then the next request is from the end time, the last successful end time that you got data from this table, that should be your start time for the second request.
So in case, let's suppose I fired 10 requests
Mhm.
at a time
Yeah.
with a gap of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I want to fetch data for the last, let's say, 300 minutes, 10 requests, 30 minutes each. I fire all the requests at the same time.
Mhm.
One of those failed. I don't know which one. So I have to figure out which one failed and I have to retry. for
Retry
that
only
request.
that record again, yeah. But so OTM keeps track of all these requests. It's stored in the database. Also, you can make a dynamic request from your application that is made the calls, and whichever ones were not success, you want to retry that, yeah. And after 3 or 4 attempts, if you didn't, that notify tech support, right? That would be a ticket that you would need to look into why something is failing over and over. Yeah, good question. Yeah. So next up, I'm going to show you some samples, so it will be clearer how it looks. So here is a sample. Somehow this screen is not popping here, but so this sample is for compressed CSV. So how do you tell it? So I mentioned it supports primary, archive, and other schemas, right? So how do you do that? So the schema equals primary is for the glog owner. So anytime you want data from glog owner, you would put that in as a schema as primary. The content type text/CSV. That is controlling whether you get CSV format files or you are getting the JSON files. Okay, so I'll show you both versions. This one is for the CSV. But the files that I mentioned, they are parts, right? You can put a prefix, you can put a path, or how you want to put this. So for example, here it's saying order release refnum / all files should have a PM underscore prefix that you want. Okay, so that's, and then this here specifies the external system. So where should OTM send this data? That is controlled by this external system parameter that you are putting in, right? And then here in this tables, you have which tables are there. So it is as you see, it's a JSON structure. You can specify many tables. Here is putting for the order release refnum, but you could have n number of tables here. So that is how the request looks like for the compressed CSV. Why it is compressed? Because it says content compression gzip, right? So the format is in gzip. So this, and as I mentioned, you can make a call to say what is the status of this request. So it will go into pending status, and it will have a number, request ID, what date you submitted, and what table for pending, and how many parts are there. So as I you could have 10 parts, you can have 1,000 parts, depending how much data you are pulling. So, and then this would tell you like specific items. So if you had order release and order release refnum here, item ID 1, order release, this is the start time, this is the end time, succeeded. If there is nothing to fetch, count is 0. If there is data to fetch, there will be okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is it will tell you which table, start and end, and then any number of parts that you may get back. Okay, so that's the CSV. Here is how it would look in your object store. So you specified that everything should be put in this folder. It has a PM underscore prefix. and these are the number of parts that you have. So, it's put all the different parts. As you can see, it has many parts that are put in. The timestamps are there, the size of the file. And when you open any of these files, it is a CSV format. So this is the format, but keep in mind the order of columns is not guaranteed. So it's not like if you have a shipment table, it's going to be shipment gate, shipment XID. It's not in sequence. It has all the columns that you asked for, but the sequence of columns is not guaranteed to be coming back in the what order of table you have. So for shipment here, you are seeing that it's showing you some data, but that's all that columns are there. It's just we are only showing some data here because data is hidden here, but you can scroll to the right and see all the other columns. So this example, as I said, you can put the data in any data object storage that you want. This example is showing it for the cloud OCI. So it's in the Oracle Cloud OCI object repository. That's where you are storing all these files. So your program, which I was referring to before, will need to poll the status when all the items have succeeded, or when one item is fully succeeded, start processing it from these. And there are timestamps in these, and you can process them in the sequence that they were supposed to be processed, and handle error handling, and handle these different parts. Okay, this here is going to show you a JSON format. So very similar to what we saw. All of these other remain the same. Main thing to note is the content type has been changed to JSON here, and it's basically also showing you how to use the date range. So when you said range after, meaning anything after this date timestamp. Okay. So that is how it is used. And again, the same way it's putting the data into the external system. And here we are looking for shipments. So what data are you looking for? You have to specify in the objects that you have to specify the list of items that you want to get. So that's your request. Here is when you make a call to the status, what it looks like. It's pending, and it gets its own request ID, and then additional things in the status. This here we are showing the Azure storage blob where the data is put in. So this is an example of if your target is an Azure object storage, then this is where data gets put in. It's still compressed, but the inside the zip file is a JSON file. And if you open that, one of them, it will be in a JSON format. Okay. With all the different objects below it. So that's how the sample is. So any questions on the samples or how to use it? Yeah.
Is there any AI innovations that you are considering that can accelerate such deployments and make the amount of effort of requesting and sharing the data lists?
Sorry, what is the first part you said? AI?
AI innovations, yeah. I mean, are you taking this to next level where AI innovations reports can decrease the time needed for doing this work, converting it more towards being low code or no code kind of?
Yes. Yeah, well, so we on our own, like as KSAP, we have introduced an application which, if time, I don't know how much time we got left here, but I'd be happy to, at the booth, walk through a live demo of what we have built, which is along the lines of what you're saying, to automate these things and
Is
take
this for
the...
specific applications, for specific destinations, or that's focused more on the source?
It will allow you to pick your cloud source. It will allow you to pick and configure your any destination target that you want to put. It could be another cloud, it could be a database, or it could be a file system. You can specify different targets, and it automates this process and hides all these complexities in that application. And through AI, you can make calls for the error handling, for the recovery, for retry, handling through the parts, handling through the deletes. All that is taken out in our application with that. Good question.
We have like 7 minutes.
7 minutes? Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. So I think this is just the implementation options. as I mentioned, you have to write your own program or subscribe to something as what we are offering. We are offering a service. It's basically export as a service, so that all this complexity is gone and you don't need to worry about the quarterly updates or error handling or setting up all this constant monitoring of this. You can also do cloud or serverless options with Amazon, Google, Microsoft. So you can lot of options open up because it's an API. You can access it from all the modern platforms. Will support your REST API, so that should not be a problem. You could also use middleware. However, that's not typical use because you need async and you want to be polling for data and the response based on this. It's not a typical use of an integration middleware. But export as service, I see that as a trend because it's not something that customers want to take on this effort as managing, and taking on all these extra efforts in getting data out of OTM. Considerations: we make sure you do your batching and sizing based on your volume, what you are expecting. Size it correctly, size the frequencies correctly. One good thing of the data export is you can set up 15 different processes to run. It doesn't have to be all every half an hour. You can do some tables which are less frequently changing, once a day, twice a day, once an hour, so on and so forth. So you can slice and dice. You can choose the columns that you want. So those things should be taken into account, and cannot emphasize enough the exception handling, monitoring, retrying, deletes. All those things need to be sequenced correctly, or things can get out of sequence if you have not given it enough thought and tested with all the different scenarios. Okay. So this, like every release of OTM since the last couple of years, Oracle has been putting in a lot of effort on this REST API exports. New features have come, like I mentioned, last 24C and 25A. Lot of things for the deletes so that you don't have to do it. Before 24B, customers used to have to export an entire day's worth of shipments, for example, compare it to what was there, what is not there in the current full list of the day, delete those manually, and a lot of processing had to be done because there was no concept of delete primary key being sent back. So it was very difficult to manage. It's getting better. Oracle is adding more and more features as we go along to this. So keep watch for more things that you might be getting in the new releases. And then rest, I think we have already covered in the considerations again. So that's essentially it. I didn't want to go over, leave time for questions. If there are questions, like I said, we have our application which we want to show you. If time permits, stop by at our booth and we can talk in detail and show you the live demo of how this thing works. But it's very exciting, gives customer a really good option, a viable alternative to Golden Gate, which is quite pricey and also requires maintenance. It's not like once you install Golden Gate, hands off, you don't have any maintenance. You do still need some DBA support. Every quarter we have customers with Golden Gate and we have customers who have done data export. When we do the support for them, every quarter Golden Gate, once in a while you still have to test, gets a glitch, you have to abandon, you can start the process again. Constant maintenance also required in monitoring because sometimes it just stops and you have a lag of several hours before somebody notices. So both options require some maintenance. This data export option requires upfront some effort, initial setup configuration, which will take a few months to set up nicely, or you can use a export as a service like what we provide and fast track and not worry about ongoing maintenance. So that's a summary of requirements.